Hello and welcome back to the channel, where I decided I was going to do a video regarding the surgery that I had on January the 13th on my foot to remove something called a Morton's neuroma. Now, I did originally make a video and I had planned to put it on my channel, but I changed my mind and thought, you know what, maybe I will make one video later on after I've had the surgery. And in fact, it's basically 3 months now since the operation. It's the 10th of April as of recording this. So what I'm going to do now, so you have an overview of the situation that I was in and the potential treatment plans that I could have had, I'm going to play that part of the video now and then come back to speak to you regarding how the surgery went and the current situation that I'm in. Because on January the 13th, I'm going to be having surgery on my left foot to have something called a Morton's neuroma removed. Now, I've had this condition for over 13 years in my left foot, but recently it's become more painful, more problematic and more noticeable, and I've finally decided that I want to try and get it resolved. Now, what is a Morton's neuroma? Basically, it's where a nerve in your foot has become distorted and a different shape. It's kind of like grown outwards, basically. If you imagine this is what a nerve should look like, nice and thin, going wherever it is in your body, it goes like this, and it's expanded outwards, and they're usually in between your third and fourth toe or second and third toe in your foot. Mine is between my third and fourth toe. So if you imagine my fourth toe and my third toe joining at the base, this is where the problem is. Now, basically that means that the nerve is now touching parts of your foot that it shouldn't do. And what does that do? Well, basically it causes you pain and discomfort. And for me, there's a few things in particular that this has felt like. Basically, it feels like there is something lodged in your foot just beneath your toes there, causing you discomfort pretty much all the time, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Now it does vary in terms of times of the day, the weather, in terms of how warm and cold it is, as to how much you feel it and how much it hurts, but pretty much it's there all the time. And in fact, the only time I don't really feel it is if I'm laid down with my feet up and I'm not moving my left foot at all. Now, usually the first thing I'll notice when I get out of bed every day is I'll put my left foot down and I will feel the neuroma. Basically, it actually feels like a double-ended pin, and it's stuck in between your foot, and it feels like it's poking either side. So it just hurts. And now I've got used to that because I've had it so long. But it's not just that, because there are other things as well. When it's cold, like really cold, as in winter now, it hurts more. It's more noticeable. Obviously, if you're on your feet a lot, by the end of the day, it's going to be very noticeable and it's going to hurt. And if I'm wearing my work boots, I will probably be walking with a limp simply because it hurts, and that's what it does to you. Now, there's not just that, because there's other things as well. Sometimes, this might just be me, but I think it is a common thing as well. Imagine this is my foot and these are my toes. Occasionally, you will get sporadic cramps in your foot and all of your toes will warp out of position like this, and they will be frozen like that for about 15-20 seconds, and you cannot move them until it passes. Now, this is uncomfortable at normal. At the best of times, it's uncomfortable, but sometimes it's actually been a bit of a problem, because it's happened quite a lot of times when I've been swimming. And if you're in the deep end, you're not near any sides, and all of a sudden your foot seizes up like this and you can't use it, it's actually a little bit worrying and a little bit of a problem. And the first thing I want to be trying to do is get to the side and hold on, because, you know, it's not nice and it does make you just feel a little bit worried. Now, I'd lived with this problem for over 10 years, and I was basically just kept on living with it because I hoped stupidly that someone would spot me playing football and say, oh wow, you've got a level of ability that could be useful for us, and I could go and play for a team. I'm not talking about playing in the Premier League or anything like that. I'm just talking about in general. I wanted to play football still, and I still do now, but obviously 2.5 years ago I had that horrible accident where my knee basically fell apart, and it ruined my life basically, and I'm still dealing with that. And I'm seeing another knee surgeon in February, because obviously when I had the knee surgery, he didn't resolve everything. It's a long story, but basically since that day, because I've not been walking properly obviously for like 2.5 years really, I think that's affected my left foot, and it's made the neuroma more noticeable and more painful, and it's just got to the point where I want it resolved. Now, when you get diagnosed with a neuroma, they give you a choice. They say, well, you can just live with it and see how it goes and see if it gets worse. You can have a steroid injection initially to see if that helps. You can actually have up to 2 if you want, to see if that can solve it. Or of course, if that doesn't work, you can have surgery. Now, obviously I lived with it for a long time. In fact, when I first got diagnosed with the neuroma, I had the injection in my foot, and once the anesthetic wore off, it had made no difference whatsoever. So I just lived with that problem for about 10 years. Then obviously it got worse, and probably about 6, 7, 8 months ago, I can't remember when it was, I got back in touch with the GP. I said, you know what, I've had enough of my neuroma. I want to go back to the podiatric hospital and try and get it sorted. Now, obviously they did another ultrasound, confirmed it was still there. Then after a lot of fuss, I did have another needle, which of course made no difference. This time it actually caused me tons of pain in my foot for 4 or 5 days. But once that wore off, it was exactly how it was. So basically I said, you know what, I will have the operation now and you can remove it and hopefully it will resolve it. Now, there are 3 surgical possibilities to my knowledge to solving a neuroma. The one that I wanted primarily was cryosurgery, because you're only going to be off work 2 or 3 days. And I think this involves a needle with a nitrogen head. And basically where the neuroma has gone like this, they burn away the excess thickening of the nerve and try to leave your nerve like this so that it can heal and you actually retain all the feeling of your foot. And obviously you're only off work a few days, so that would be the best scenario. But unfortunately the NHS say they do not do this, and you would have to pay a lot of money to have it done privately. Now, the second choice that you can have, this is, I inquired about this one as well, is what I should say, is have to have the operation done through the base of your foot. This way, they cut through here. They don't have to cut through anything on the top of your foot, and they remove the neuroma from the base of your foot. Now, the problem with this is you have to be off work even longer because you can't do any weight bearing. I think it's for like 4 weeks after that surgery. And when I inquired about this at the podiatric hospital, they refused to do it. They said they would never do it this way. And if I wanted it done that way, I would have to find another hospital. Well, that's impossible because they're the only place in Herefordshire that does it for me. So I didn't have a choice. So the basic way of doing the operation is through the top of your foot. So if you imagine this is the top of my foot and here's my 4th and 3rd toes, you have an incision made down here, and they have to cut through one of the ligaments in your foot to get to the neuroma. Now, what that means, hopefully not, but in the worst case scenario, over time, apparently, your 3rd and 4th toes can do this because that ligament has been cut through to get to the nerve. Now, they've assured me this shouldn't happen because if they do the surgery in the podiatric hospital, everybody there is really careful and they don't have any experience of that happening. And my mum has actually had this surgery in both of her feet, and thankfully her toes are all still in line. So that's what I'm hoping doesn't happen. That's been my biggest fear, and that's why I've been put off from having the operation, because you have to cut through a ligament to get to it. But because I've resigned myself to the fact I'm never going to be able to play football properly ever again now because of my knee, even if I get the surgery to sort out the meniscus tear I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to recover properly. And to be fair, considering how old I am now, I know I'm never going to be able to play football really. Not how I want to. Anyway, so I've finally just succumbed to thinking, yes, I'll have the operation and get this removed and hopefully recover. Now, what does this mean long term? It means where they make the incision and remove the damaged nerve, you will have a numb spot here. Basically, because the nerve isn't there anymore, you will not feel anything on this part of your foot. Now, they've said that you may get a bit of feeling back over time, but because they're obviously removing part of the nerve, you are going to lose feeling in that part of the foot. But you know what? I can live with that. If I don't have the discomfort, the pain, and the random sporadic cramps, I can live with that. One of the things is because when I have played football with this in the past, as soon as you put a tighter shoe on, like a football boot or a shoe, it hurts and it's really uncomfortable, and it takes probably about 45 minutes or so of running and playing to really start to try and forget about that pain in your foot. So I'm hoping once that is done, and hopefully if I can play football again, then I won't have that feeling in my foot, because that is a big factor really in having this surgery to try and get rid of it. Now, what does it mean about time scale off work? Yes, I'm probably going to be off work 4 to 6 weeks. It really depends how I recover, how it feels, and assuming there's no problems and stuff. So hopefully after watching that, you've got an idea now what a Morton's neuroma is and the potential treatments. Now, on January the 13th, I went to the Belmont Podiatric Hospital in Hereford for my operation. It's a very small place. It just has a small waiting area, a few consultancy rooms, a room where the two people who are waiting for procedures wait. They don't even have full beds. They're just literally half-size beds. And you've got an anesthetic room and an operating room, and that is it. So it's pretty much kind of like an in and out place as fast as they can possibly do your procedure. And I'm going to come back to that because that's probably going to tie in with my current situation. So I went in, I had my operation, I had loads of anesthetic in my foot and my ankle so that you couldn't feel anything, and I was awake for the procedure. They simply put up one of these sheets so you can't see the people cutting into your foot. Procedure probably took about half an hour, maybe not even half an hour at max, I think it was. To be honest, I came out and then 20 minutes later they wanted me out of the hospital and gone. It really was that quick. In fact, I was waiting for my procedure to be done longer than the actual operation and the recovery process, if you want to call it that, I should say. Now, I didn't even speak to the foot surgeon after the operation. I was just had a nurse, I should say, talking to me briefly about don't do this and don't do that kind of thing, and that was it. You don't get any physio booked for this kind of surgery. It's basically just have it and I guess hope that you recover. Now, initially, my foot was very painful. It was drastically worse than I thought it was ever going to be. In fact, it was worse than recovering from my ACL surgery a couple of years ago. And I will be making another video regarding that on or just after June the 5th, because I'll have an idea of what's going to happen with my knee then. But I was signed off work for 4 weeks initially. It got to the end of the 4 weeks. I couldn't walk, basically. I couldn't put any pressure on my foot. It was basically so painful at the top of my foot. I'll show some video footage now of what my actual foot looks like now, where the incision was. But there's no problem on the top of my foot where it was cut into. All the problem was on the bottom of my foot, and I was convinced I'd got something called stump neuroma form. All of my symptoms that I had now match that, which is obviously worse than the original Morton's neuroma. A stump neuroma is in your foot where they cut the section of nerve out that's damaged. You've got a nerve end in here and here, and it's basically where they try and reattach, and the ends, obviously there's nothing there, so they grow and form into balls, and it's basically like a neuroma again, apart from it's worse. And I was convinced I had this. Now, I phoned back up the podiatric hospital. I did go and see somebody. It wasn't the surgeon, it was a different doctor. He said I didn't have that, and I had a bolus of scar tissue formed in my foot, basically like a massive hard lump in my foot. And I was just like, how can I have so much scar tissue from such a minor operation? It was rock hard, really painful, so uncomfortable to walk. It's like I had half of a golf ball like stuck on the bottom of my foot or on the bottom of my shoe, and I was walking on it, and it sucked. So I had to go back. I think after, it was 5 weeks and 4 days maybe after my surgery, I went back for a second procedure, if you want to call it that. I had loads of needles in my foot and ankle to numb my ankle, and then this other doctor was basically trying to break the scar tissue in my foot to try and make it more comfortable to walk. And now that took about 20 minutes or so. It hurt loads. After this, I had such massive shooting pains into the outside of my third toe that seriously hurt. I've never had that before. I never had it before I had the surgery, I should say, and I never had it before going back for the follow-up. That sucked. Thankfully, that has actually wore away now, but it didn't really help me at all. It was still just the same. I had to go back to work. And from being back at work a week or so, I kind of got used to it, I'd say. I wore it down slightly, but my foot was still massively worse than before the procedure. So I got back in touch again. I had to go again. This was 2 weeks ago now, and have the same thing done again. Loads of needles in my foot, and those needles in your foot for the anesthetic to block out any feeling from below your ankle are so painful. They are the most painful needles I've ever had in my life. And he did the same thing again, trying to break my foot. This left loads of bruising on the top of my foot this time. But again, it's made no difference. My foot is exactly the same. So currently, 3 months after the surgery, I've had absolutely no benefits from this surgery and just problems. So I still have this lump feeling in my foot, like there's something stuck on there. You're walking on part of a ball and it is rubbish, because the more you walk, the more it's uncomfortable and the more it hurts. Take into account some days I'm at my one job for like 6.5 hours, then I'm at my other job for 3 or 4 hours as well. They're long days and they are rubbish. My foot has absolutely no benefit from this surgery. Something else I've got since the operation is, if I feel across the top of my foot at a certain point, it is like somebody zapping the end of my fourth toe and giving it mini electric shots over and over and over again. All you have to do is just run your hand across, or an object across, a certain part of my foot, and it just does it, and it's just relentless every time you do it, and it's so annoying. Never had this problem before. To be honest, it genuinely feels like the neuroma is still there. Sometimes when I move, I still feel like, I spoke about having a double-ended like pin in my foot before the surgery in the other video, and it still kind of feels like that, and it absolutely sucks. I massively regret having this operation, and I think the main problem is the fact that the operation was done ridiculously fast. I mean, I had no idea it would be done this quick. Now, if you cut into people's flesh and you're cutting through tissue in the foot really quickly, I think there's a far higher chance of a buildup of scar tissue, and I genuinely think that's what's happened in my foot. Now, at the moment, I don't know what is going to happen, because I phoned the podiatric hospital and left a message a couple of days ago saying, you know, my foot's way worse than it was before the surgery. I do not want to be left like this. Something's got to be done. They've not got back to me yet. I don't know what's going to happen, but my advice would be, if you're having this surgery, really think about like where you're having it done. If you're having it done privately on the NHS, or, you know, my mum had it done, and she had it done on the NHS, but she had it done at a different place called the Nuffield Centre in Hereford, and that's a private hospital, I think. And when she had it done, she stayed in overnight. Now, she did have bunions on the outside of her feet as well, which had to be like repositioned, and she'd actually had 2 toes warped out of position, and she had to have pins put in them to straighten them out. So the one procedure especially was like much more serious, and she was in overnight both times she had hers. But I genuinely feel like hers were done probably more carefully, more perhaps thoughtful in terms of long-term recovery. My mum never had this problem in her foot, so at the moment I'm just really disappointed. First and foremost, I'm upset, as well as those problems. Actually, now if I put my finger in between my 3rd and 4th toe, it is really uncomfortable, and it doesn't feel nice, especially on my 4th toe. Now, obviously, as well as that, having part of a nerve removed means you lose feeling in part of your foot. So on the bottom of my foot, I've now got numb areas that I just can't feel, and the one just below like my 3rd and 4th toe, like the I don't know the name of your foot, where it goes like the part of your foot goes like this, that is just rock hard, and that's where all the pain and the discomfort is, and it really sucks. It really does. I don't know what is going to be done about this, but having this added to the problems still going on with my knee is absolutely crap. The NHS in Hereford, like the hospital and the podiatry place now, have done me absolutely no favors with the treatment that I've had, and it genuinely sucks. I'm still trying to put in complaints about my knee and stuff, and I'm now at a different hospital waiting. Like I said, on the 5th of June, I'll find out if they're going to sort out meniscus damage in my foot, but I will make a more detailed video on that at the time. So I just thought I wanted to make this video to sort of like air my frustrations and talk about it. It's really disappointing more than anything else. Where my foot was cut through on the top, where the scar is there, that's not a problem. It doesn't hurt at all. It's actually inside my foot that the problem is, and it's just genuinely disappointing, because I wasn't expecting this. I was expecting, my 2 concerns were that my toes, where they cut through the ligament on the top of your foot, your toes can potentially like spread apart. I guess that could still happen. That was my primary concern. My secondary concern was stump neuroma forming. Now I've been told I don't have that. I'm imagining I will go back and they will have to scan my foot either with an ultrasound or an MRI to try and find out exactly if it just is scar tissue or whether there's something else now wrong. But all I know is that I wish I hadn't had this done. I wish I'd saved up the thousands of pounds required to have cryosurgery, because I genuinely think that would have been a far better procedure to be done with a far more positive outlook. But doing this, I just feel like, you know, the surgeons butchered my foot and made it genuinely worse. I mean, for all the weeks, the first like 5 or 6 weeks after the surgery, it was genuinely like the neuroma was still there. It had been seriously aggravated, and it was really now just like pissed off, and it was going to try and cause me as much pain as possible. And whilst it's not that bad now, it's still really uncomfortable and hurts to be walking on my foot. And, you know, I can't run on it properly or anything. So I just feel genuinely frustrated. So yeah, my video, really, this video I should say, is just really about for people who not had this procedure and maybe are waiting to have it done on the NHS, because I'm just telling you, you know, think about it, and I would really inquire sort of like, you know, where it's been done, how long it's going to take, what they're planning to do once you've had the operation. If it's just going to be in and out like mine, I would really reconsider. If I'd have known it was going to be sort of like rushed as much as it was, I wouldn't have had it done 100%, because my foot is just 100% worse. It's given me no benefits and just more problems. So that is what this video was about, just to explain all of that. Now, if anybody watching this has had Morton's neuroma surgery like me on the NHS, where they cut through the top of your foot, and you had the problems that I've had with a massive hard ball forming in your foot, let me know down below. Let me know if you got it resolved, if it got better like 4, 5, 6 months later, or what. Because at the moment I'm just stuck. It's not made any progress in the last 6 weeks, I would say, at all, and it is pretty depressing stuff. That is it for this video. Like always, I will be back with more gaming reviews and first impressions videos in the coming days and weeks. So that is it for today. Thank you for watching, and like always, I will see you again soon. Goodbye for now.